The silent depths drifted through the void like a ghost learning to forget it was ever alive. Captain Kalen Voss stood at the viewport of the salvage vessel's cramped bridge, his reflection a pale ghost superimposed over the stars. Behind him, the crew worked in practiced silence, the silence of professionals who had not yet learned each other's names beyond their function. Thrix, the Xanthian engineer, clicked her mandibles in irritation as she rerouted power through failing conduits. Her 4 arms moved in synchronized precision, each limb performing a separate task. She had been with Voss for 11 months. She still called him Captain like it was a disease she was trying not to catch. Myra, the Kelpen pilot, floated near her station with the boneless grace of her aquatic species. Her dome-shaped helmet concealed features that Voss had learned to read anyway: the tilt of her head, the flutter of her breathing slits, the way her webbed fingers tapped rhythms only she could hear. She had been with him for 8 months. She had laughed exactly twice. And Jax the Vorkath, hulking and silent, his carapace armor gleaming under the dim emergency lighting. The muscle, the weapon, the one who had tried to kill Voss on their first meeting and now merely tolerated him with the patience of a predator waiting for weakness. He had been with Voss for 14 months. He had never spoken a word. 4 aliens, 1 human, a salvage crew held together by contracts and desperation. "Captain," Thrix said, her voice a dry rasp, "we're wasting fuel on this drift pattern. The asteroid field has nothing. Sensors show nothing. The last 3 wrecks were picked clean by scavengers with better taste in garbage than us." Voss didn't turn around. "Keep scanning." "We've been scanning for 6 hours." "Then make it 7. Thrix's mandibles clicked faster, her equivalent of a human grinding teeth. She looked at Myra, who shrugged with her tentacles, then at Jax, who didn't react at all. The Vorkath stood like a monument to indifference, his 3-toed claws gripping the handrail with mechanical stillness. The Silent Depths was not a happy ship. It was not even a friendly ship. It was a transaction, repeated daily. Voss paid them, they worked, and everyone pretended the arrangement was enough. Voss knew better. He had learned long ago that deep space did 2 things to crews. It either tore them apart or fused them into something unbreakable. His crew was still in the tearing phase, and they had been there for over a year. The silence between them had weight, the weight of unspoken resentments, of species barriers, of the fundamental loneliness of beings who had evolved under different suns. "Contact," Myra said suddenly. Voss turned. The Kelpen's webbed fingers flew across her console, her breathing slits fluttering rapid fire. "Passive scan only. It's big, it's—" "Captain, it's broadcasting a Dominion distress code." The bridge went cold. The Xylos Dominion was the terror of this sector, a hive-minded empire that consumed species the way humans consumed oxygen, automatically, ruthlessly, without a second thought. They had been humanity's first hostile contact, and they had nearly won. Only a desperate alliance of 12 species had pushed them back to their current borders. And now a Dominion ship was dying within scanning range. "Military vessel?" Voss asked. "Doesn't matter," Thrix snapped. "It's Dominion, we leave now." "The distress signal is automatic," Myra said, her voice softening with something that might have been pity. "Life signs. 3, fatting. Captain, they're going to die." "They're the enemy," Jax spoke. Everyone froze. The Vorkath rarely spoke. His species considered words a weakness, a waste of breath that could be spent on action. But when Jax spoke, the crew listened. "They are Dominion," he repeated, his voice a low rumble like stones grinding underground. "They would not save us, they would consume us. Leave them." Voss looked at each of them in turn, Thrix rigid with fear, Myra conflicted and soft, Jax immovable as death. He thought about the contracts that bound them, the way Thrix flinched when he entered a room, the way Myra's laughter had died somewhere in the darkness between stars, the way Jax had never once called him by name. They were not a family. They were four corners of a square that refused to close. "Thrix," Voss said quietly, "plot an intercept course." "Captain." "That's an order." Thrix's mandibles clicked once, twice. Then she turned to her station without another word. Myra guided the ship toward the wreckage. Through the viewport, Voss watched the Dominion vessel grow from a pinprick to a broken giant. Its chitinous hull cracked open like an egg, atmosphere bleeding into the void in frozen ribbons. "3 life signs, fatting." "Prepare the med bay," Voss said. "For Dominion soldiers." Jax's voice carried no judgment, only cold curiosity. "For living beings," Voss replied. He didn't look at them. He didn't need to. He could feel the bridge shifting around him, not the ship, but the crew. Something was changing. Something was cracking open. And in the darkness of the silent depths, 3 dying enemies waited to become something worse than threats. They waited to become family. The distress signal pulses. The crew's silence deepens, and Captain Voss makes a choice that will either save them all or doom them to something far worse than death. The airlock cycled with a sound like a dying breath. Voss stood in full-pressure suit, his helmet mag-locked to his hip, watching through the inner door as the outer chamber flooded with the Dominion vessel's remaining atmosphere. Contaminated, toxic to humans, but the 3 figures slumped against the walls were already beyond caring about toxicity. "Life signs are unstable," Myra reported through the comm. Her voice trembled. "1 is critical, Captain, I really don't think." "Noted." Voss stepped into the airlock. The inner door sealed behind him. The outer door opened onto carnage. The Dominion ship's interior was not built for salvage, it was built for war. Organic corridors pulsed with dying light, bioluminescent veins flickering like a heart in arrest. The 3 figures lay in a tangle of limbs and chitin, their armor cracked, their breathing shallow. Xylos. Voss had seen them only in combat footage, swarming, shrieking, their hive mind driving them forward with single-minded fury. But these 3 were different. These 3 were separate from the hive, cut off, alone. The smallest one, a young soldier, barely adult by the look of its underdeveloped carapace, raised a trembling claw. Its 4 eyes were clouded with pain and something Voss didn't expect. Fear. Not of death, of him. "It's going to attack," Thrix said over the comm. "I'm telling you, Captain, it's a trap." Voss knelt down, slow and deliberate, keeping his hands visible. The Xylos soldier watched him with the terror of a prey animal. Its mandibles quivered, trying to form words in a language Voss didn't speak. "It's okay," Voss said. The words were meaningless to the Xylos, but the tone wasn't. The soldier's claw lowered by a fraction of an inch. Behind it, the other 2 Xylos were unconscious, one bleeding from a crack in its skull plate, the other curled in a fetal position with its limbs tucked tight against its chest. The soldier was trying to protect them. Even dying, even afraid, it was trying to be a shield. Voss understood that. "Thrix, I need medical data on Xylos physiology. Now." "I don't have." "Find it. Myra, prep stasis pods for 2 of them. Jax, I need you in here." Silence, then Jax's voice low and reluctant. "I will not carry an enemy." "You'll carry a patient, or you'll find another ship." The words hung in the air, sharp as broken glass. Voss didn't look back at the camera. He kept his eyes on the young soldier, on the way its terror was slowly, impossibly beginning to fade. Jax entered the airlock. The Vorkath was nearly twice Voss's size, his carapace rippling with muscle and ancient genetic memory. He looked at the Xylos the way a hammer looks at a nail, with the certainty of impact. But he knelt, and he lifted the unconscious Xylos with the bleeding skull plate, cradling it against his chest like a child. The young soldier watched this with its 4 eyes wide. It made a sound, a clicking, chittering noise that might have been a word or a sob. Then it collapsed, its strength finally gone. Voss caught it before it hit the deck. The med bay became a war zone. Thrix had found the physiological data buried in an old Alliance database, Xylo's blood chemistry, organ placement, the fragile network of neural tissue that connected them to their hive. Without that connection, the data warned, Xylos experienced withdrawal, pain, psychosis. They're cut off from the hive mind, Voss said, reading the report over Thrix's shoulder. They're alone, for the first time in their lives. Then they're dangerous, Thrix snapped. Hive creatures without a hive are unstable. We should put them out of the airlock before. Before what? Thrix didn't answer. Voss moved to the young soldier's bedside. The Xylos had been stabilized, its wounds sealed, its fluids balanced, but its eyes remained closed. Its mandibles twitched in its sleep, forming shapes that might have been distress calls to a hive that would never answer. Voss reached out and touched its claw. The Xylos's eyes snapped open. 4 black orbs stared at him, unfocused and terrified. The creature tried to pull away, but its body wouldn't obey. It made that clicking sound again, the same one from the airlock. A question, a plea. It's asking for its hive, Myra said softly from the doorway. She had been watching, her helmet removed, her delicate facial tentacles quivering with emotion. I've studied their language, just the basics. That's the call for mother. Voss looked at the young soldier, at its trembling claw wrapped in his human fingers, at the terror in its alien eyes. You're not getting your mother back, Voss said quietly, but you're not alone. He didn't know if the Xylos understood his words, but he saw something shift in those 4 black eyes, something that wasn't fear or pain or withdrawal. Something that looked impossibly like hope. Behind him, Thrix clicked her mandibles in frustration. Myra wiped moisture from her tentacles, and Jack stood in the corner, silent as stone, watching the human captain with an expression that might have been confusion or might have been the first stirrings of respect. The silent depths had cracked open, and through the crack, something new was beginning to grow. The Xylos soldier watches Voss with eyes that have never seen kindness from an enemy. The crew watches Voss with eyes that have never seen this version of him. And in the darkness between stars, the Dominion hunting fleet has picked up the distress signal's echo. 3 days. That was how long it took for the young Xylo to speak its first word of English. Voss had named it Vex, not because the name meant anything in any language, but because the sound made the creature's mandibles relax when he said it. The other 2 Xylos remained unconscious, their injuries severe enough to require stasis. But Vex healed fast. Xylo's biology was designed for war, and war meant rapid recovery. Vex recovered in Voss's mess hall, watching the human cook with the bewildered fascination of a child seeing fire for the first time. You eat plants. Vex's voice was a series of clicks translated by the makeshift device Thrix had cobbled together, a salvaged translator unit jury-rigged to interpret Xylo's mandible vibrations. The words came out flat and mechanical, but the emotion underneath was unmistakable. Disgust. Some of us do, Voss said, stirring a pot of vegetable stew. Myra's species is aquatic. She eats mostly protein paste. Jax eats whatever Jax eats. He eats meat, Thrix said from the doorway, her arms crossed. She had been watching Voss's interactions with Vex like a scientist observing a dangerous experiment. Raw, preferably still twitching. Vorkath don't believe in cooking. Vex's head tilted at an angle that would have broken a human neck. Cooking, this is cooking. This is cooking, Voss confirmed. He ladled stew into a bowl and set it on the table in front of Vex. Try it. Vex stared at the bowl like it contained poison. His species absorbed nutrients through membrane patches on their forearms. Eating solid food was for emergencies only. But something in Voss's expression, patient, expectant, utterly without threat, made Vex extend a trembling claw. He dipped it in the stew. He brought it to his mandibles. He made a sound that Thrix's translator registered as distress, but that Voss recognized as surprise. "It's warm," Vex said. "Yes. I did not know warm could be, not pain." Voss sat down across from him. The mess hall was small, barely large enough for the table and 6 chairs that had never all been occupied at once. But tonight, Myra drifted in from the corridor, her webbed feet leaving damp prints on the deck. Even Jax appeared, filling the doorway like a wall of chitin and silence. They were all watching. "Not Vex, Voss." "How does a hive work?" Voss asked, stirring his own stew. Vex's mandibles clicked in confusion. "It works. There is the queen, there are the warriors, there are the drones, everyone knows their place. And when a warrior is injured, warriors who cannot fight are returned to the biomass, reclaimed, recycled." Vex's voice didn't change, the translator couldn't convey emotion, but his claws trembled. "It is efficient." "Efficient," Voss repeated. He let the word hang in the air. "What about you? You were injured, you couldn't fight, your ship was dying. Why didn't the hive reclaim you?" Vex was silent for a long moment. "Because the hive was dying too," he finally said. "The queen was dead. When the queen dies, the hive scatters. We were not reclaimed because there was no one left to reclaim us." The mess hall was so quiet Voss could hear the ship's life support humming through the walls. "I was afraid," Vex continued, and this time the translator caught something new in his voice, a tremor, a crack in the mechanical flatness. "I did not know fear before. In the hive there is no fear, there is only purpose. But when the queen died, the purpose died and there was only emptiness. And then you came." He looked at Voss with all 4 eyes. "You are not efficient," Vex said. "You are not logical, you are not anything I was taught to expect. You waste food on an enemy. You waste medicine on an enemy. You sit across from an enemy and ask about his feelings." Voss smiled. It was a small smile, tired at the edges but genuine. "That's what people do, Vex. They sit with each other. They ask questions. They waste time on things that don't make sense. That is inefficient." "Yes," Voss agreed, "it is." Thrix made a sound of disgust and left the mess hall. Myra lingered a moment longer, her tentacles curled in an expression Voss had learned to read as longing. Then she too slipped away. Only Jax remained. The Vorkath moved with sudden, surprising silence, crossing the mess hall to stand beside Vex's chair. He looked down at the young Xylos, at the trembling claws, the healing wounds, the 4 wide eyes. Then Jax reached out and touched Vex's shoulder. It was the lightest touch Voss had ever seen from the Vorkath, barely a brush of claws against chitin, but Vex went rigid, his mandibles freezing mid-click. "That is how Vorkath say you are not food," Jax rumbled. Then he turned and left. Voss looked at Vex. Vex looked at the door where Jax had disappeared. "What just happened?" Vex whispered. Voss laughed, actually laughed, the sound surprising even himself. "I think," he said, "that was a welcome." That night, Voss found Thrix in engineering, recalibrating systems that didn't need recalibrating. "You're angry," he said. "I am logical," she replied without turning around. "You are making a mistake, Captain. You are treating enemies as family, and family is a weakness. Family is the only strength that matters." Thrix finally turned. Her mandibles clicked once, sharp, final. "You humans are the strangest species in the galaxy. You bond with anything, you love anything. You would adopt a rock if it looked at you with sad eyes. Is that a complaint?" Thrix was silent. Then slowly her mandibles relaxed. "No," she admitted, "I suppose it's not." She turned back to her work. Voss left her there knowing that something had shifted, not just in Thrix but in all of them. The crack was widening, and through it warmth was flooding in. Vex eats stew that tastes like belonging. Jax touches an enemy like a brother. Thrix pretends not to care. and on the edge of sensor range, the Dominion hunting fleet receives its orders: find the survivors and destroy whatever has taken them. The alert klaxon tore through the silent depth like a scalpel through skin. Voss was in the med bay when it happened, checking on the two unconscious Xylos. Vex was beside him, learning to read human vital signs on the display screens. Thrix was in engineering. Myra was on the bridge. Jax was everywhere and nowhere as always. "Captain," Myra's voice over the comm was tight, controlled, the voice of a pilot who had seen death and was trying not to recognize it. "We have multiple contacts. Dominion configuration. They're coming out of fold space at the edge of the system." Voss's blood went cold. "How many?" "6, no, 7, Captain. They're hunting." He was already moving, Vex scrambling to keep up on his still-healing limbs. The young Xylos's mandibles clicked in rapid-fire patterns, fear. Voss had learned to recognize pure, unfiltered terror. "They are from my hive," Vex said. "I recognize the signatures, the hunting fleet. They are looking for survivors." "They're looking for you." "Yes." Voss hit the bridge at a run. Myra was already pulling up tactical displays on the main viewport, 7 red dots blooming like bloodstains against the starfield. The Dominion ships were massive, each one a biological nightmare of chitin and organic cannons. The Silent Depths was a salvage vessel. It had no weapons. It had no armor. It had no chance. "Can we outrun them?" Voss asked. Myra's tentacles curled in a negative. "Their drives are faster. Their sensors are better. They'll have us in weapons range in 20 minutes. Then we negotiate." Every head on the bridge turned toward Voss. Even Vex stared, his 4 eyes wide. "Negotiate," Thrix said flatly over the comm. "With the Dominion, the species that eats other species. We have 3 of their people on board. That's leverage." "That's dinner," Thrix snapped. "They don't negotiate, Captain. They consume. The only language they understand is force, and we have none." Voss looked at Vex. The young Xylos was trembling, his claws digging into the handrail with enough force to leave grooves. "They will kill you," Vex said quietly. "And they will take us back. We will be reclaimed. It will be as if we never left." "Not if I have anything to say about it." Voss opened a channel. The bridge held its breath. "Dominion hunting fleet, this is Captain Kalen Voss of the salvage vessel Silent Depths. I have 3 of your people on board, survivors of a destroyed hive ship. They are alive. They are injured. I request safe passage to return them to you." Silence. Then a voice crawled through the speakers. Not a translation, but actual Dominion speech. All clicks and chittering and subsonic harmonics that made Voss's teeth ache. "You have taken what is ours." "I didn't take anything. I rescued them." Rescue is a concept we do not recognize. There is possession and there is loss. You possess what is ours. Return it and your death will be quick. Voss's jaw tightened. Beside him, Myra was shaking. Her species was sensitive to subsonic frequencies, and the Dominion voice was physically painful for her. "I'm offering to return them," Voss said, peacefully. "No one else needs to die." The hive does not negotiate with prey. The channel went silent. Voss looked at his crew. Myra, terrified but steady. Thrix, furious and frightened in equal measure. Jax, waiting with the patience of an executioner. And Vex, trembling, broken, but still standing. "What do we do?" Vex whispered. Voss thought about his old life, before the Silent Depths, before the salvage, before the loneliness. He thought about the family he had lost to the Dominion years ago, the one he never talked about. He thought about the silence that had followed him through space like a ghost. Then he looked at his crew, his strange, fractured, barely functioning crew, and made a decision. "Jax," he said, "arm the mining charges." "You can't fight 7 Dominion ships with mining charges," Thrix said. "I'm not going to fight them." "Then what are you going to do?" Voss smiled, It was not a kind smile. I'm going to make them afraid. The Dominion hailing frequency opened again 5 minutes later. This time it wasn't Voss who spoke. Vex stood at the comm station, his mandibles trembling, his translator device broadcasting his words into the void. He spoke in his native tongue, clicking, chittering, full of subsonic resonance that made the bridge lights flicker. I am Vex, warrior of the lost hive. I am alive. I am not reclaimed, and I am not coming back. The Dominion response was immediate and furious. You are hive property. You will return or be destroyed. I am not property, Vex said. I am a person. These beings have shown me what that means. They have fed me, healed me, sat with me when I was afraid. The hive never did that. The hive never even knew I was afraid. Fear is weakness. Then I am weak, and I would rather be weak and free than strong and owned. The channel crackled with Dominion rage. Voss watched Vex's face, watched the terror and defiance warring behind those 4 alien eyes. The young soldier was trembling so hard his claws rattled against the console. But he didn't stop. The humans call this family, Vex continued. I did not understand it at first. I thought it was inefficiency. But now I know, family is the thing that makes you willing to die for someone who is not yourself. Family is the thing that turns prey into predators. Family is the thing that will make you afraid of us. The Dominion commander's voice dropped to a whisper, a subsonic growl that made the ship shudder. What have they done to you? Vex looked at Voss, at Myra, at the speaker where Thrix listened in engineering, at the shadow where Jax waited in the corridor. They have made me, Vex said, into something you cannot control. The fleet opened fire. Lasers tear through the void. The silent depths has no weapons, but it has something worse. It has a human who knows how to make monsters afraid, and it has a former enemy who just declared war on his own species. The first volley missed by a margin that made Myra scream. Voss felt the shockwave through the deck plates, not an impact, but the near miss of a plasma bolt that superheated the void around them. The silent depths lurched, its hull groaning like a wounded animal. Evasive maneuvers, Voss shouted. Myra's tentacles flew across her console. The ship twisted, dove, rolled, a dance of desperation that had no choreography, only instinct. Another bolt flashed past, close enough to boil paint from the hull. We can't keep this up, Thrix yelled over the comm. One hit and we're. The ship shuddered. Not a weapon strike, something else. Voss grabbed his console as the lights flickered. Report. Fold space rupture, Myra said, her voice climbing toward hysteria. Something's coming through, something big. Captain, that's not a Dominion signature. The viewport exploded with light. A ship emerged from fold space. Not Dominion, not Alliance, but something older. Something that Voss had never seen before but recognized instantly from the history files. A Vorketh battle cruiser. Jack stepped forward, his claws raised. For the first time in 14 months, his face, or what Voss could see of it beneath the carapace, showed something other than indifference. My people, Jax rumbled, they heard. Heard what? Voss demanded. The distress signal, the one I sent 3 days ago. Jax turned to face him, and there was something in his eyes that Voss had never seen before. Respect. You said family is the only strength that matters. I disagreed, so I called my family to prove you wrong. The Vorketh cruiser opened fire. Not at the silent depths. At the Dominion fleet. The battle was not a battle, it was a slaughter. Vorketh ships were built for one purpose: extinction. Their weapons didn't disable, they erased. Dominion chitin buckled and burned under the assault, Hive ships shrieking as their organic components died in screaming agony. But the Dominion didn't retreat. They couldn't. The Hive mind didn't understand retreat any more than it understood negotiation. It only understood consumption and death. And death was coming for them. Get us clear, Voss shouted over the chaos. Myra wrestled the controls, guiding the silent depths through the storm of weapon fire and debris. A Dominion ship exploded to their port side, its death throes sending shockwaves that nearly flipped them end over end. Then the second volley came. Not from the Dominion. From the Vorkath cruiser. "We're being targeted," Myra screamed. Voss looked at Jax. The Vorkath stood frozen, his claws raised, his eyes wide. "My people, they don't distinguish. We're in the way. We're all in the way." The targeting lock flashed on the display. 5 seconds to impact. Voss didn't think, he acted. Thrix, emergency power to engines. Myra hard to starboard. Jax, brace the missile hit. Not the silent depths. The Dominion flagship. Vex had thrown himself at the comm station, his claws slamming commands into the console with desperate speed. He had overridden the targeting systems, feeding the Vorkath cruiser false coordinates, redirecting the missile at the last possible second. But the feedback surge had caught him. Vex collapsed, smoke rising from his carapace, his 4 eyes staring at nothing. "Vex!" Voss was across the bridge before he knew he'd moved, catching the young Xylos before he hit the deck. The translator device was sparking, dying, but Vex's mandibles were still moving, forming words that Voss didn't need a translator to understand. Did I help?" "You helped," Voss said, his voice cracking. "You saved us. Stay with me, Vex." "Stay." Vex's claws found Voss's hand, squeezed. "The Hive never touched me," Vex whispered. "Not like this, not like family." His eyes closed. The Dominion fleet, seeing their flagship crippled, seeing their commander's signal go dark, did something the Hive mind had never done before. They retreated. The silent depths drifted through the wreckage, its hull cracked, its systems failing, its crew broken. Voss sat on the deck of the med bay, Vex's body laid out on the table beside him. The young Xylos wasn't dead, not yet, but his vitals were fatting, his neural tissue damaged beyond what the med bay could repair. "The Vorkath cruiser is hailing us," Myra said from the doorway. Her tentacles were tangled with grief. "Tell them to wait." Thrix appeared beside Myra, her mandibles clicking in a rhythm Voss had never heard before. It took him a moment to recognize it. A morning rhythm. "He was enemy," Thrix said quietly. "He was supposed to be enemy." "He was family," Voss replied. Jax stepped into the med bay. The Vorkath moved to the table, looked down at Vex's broken body, and did something Voss had never seen a Vorkath do. He knelt. "You called him family," Jax said. "I did not understand. I thought family was blood. I thought family was species. I thought family was the ship that came when I called." He reached out and touched Vex's claw, the same gentle touch from the mess hall 3 days ago. "I was wrong," Jax said. "Family is this. Family is the one who dies so you can live." He looked at Voss. "You're humans, you call them family, but you made us family too. A Xanthian who hates everyone, a Kelpen who lost her laughter, a Vorkath who forgot how to speak. You made us family and then you made us believe it." Voss didn't have words. He had never had words. All he had was the silent depths and the strange beings he had collected like broken stars. "The Vorkath cruiser wants to know what to do with the Dominion survivors," Thrix said. "The ones we rescued, Vex's people." Voss looked at Vex's still face, at the claws that had held his hand, at the young soldier who had learned about family and paid the price with his life. "Tell them," Voss said, "that we keep what we save." Vex's vitals flatline. The med bay goes silent, and somewhere in the darkness between life and death, a young Xylos who learned to love hears the voice of a human calling him back. The human body could survive 3 minutes without oxygen. The human heart could stop for up to 20 minutes and still restart, given the right conditions. But Vex wasn't human, and Voss had no idea how long a Xylos could survive neural collapse. "Again," he said. Thrix's mandibles clicked in protest. "Captain, the neural stimulator isn't designed for Xylos physiology. Every pulse risks further damage." "Again." She fired the stimulator. Vex's body arched off the table, then fell back. The heart monitor, jury-rigged to read Xylos biology, showed nothing but static. "He's gone," Myra whispered. Voss grabbed Vex's claw, squeezed. "You don't get to do this," he said, his voice low and fierce. "You don't get to learn what family means and then leave. That's not how this works. Family doesn't abandon family." No response. "You saved us. You threw yourself at a missile to save us. That's not the action of someone who's ready to die. That's the action of someone who wants to live." The heart monitor flickered. Voss leaned closer, his forehead almost touching Vex's carapace. "You told the Dominion you weren't property. You told them you were a person. Now prove it. Wake up, Vex. Wake up and be a person with us." The heart monitor beeped. Once. Twice. 3 times. Vex's eyes opened. The Dominion hunting fleet had regrouped at the edge of the system. 7 ships had become 4. The Vorkath cruiser had destroyed the others. But 4 Dominion ships were still enough to kill the silent depths 10 times over. And now they were demanding Vex. "He's awake," Thrix said, staring at her readings in disbelief. "His neural pathways are repairing themselves. Captain, this shouldn't be possible." "He didn't want to die," Voss said simply. He was already moving toward the comm station, already opening a channel to the Dominion fleet. "You want him," Voss said. "Come and get him." The Dominion commander's voice crackled with fury. "You have no weapons. You have no defenses. You have nothing but a crippled ship and a stolen warrior. Surrender him, or we will burn you to atoms." Voss looked at his crew. Myra trembling but steady at the helm. Thrix, her mandibles set in grim determination. Jax standing like a monument to violence. And Vex, still weak, still healing, but standing on his own 2 feet. "You're right," Voss said. "We have no weapons, we have no armor, we have no chance in a fair fight." He smiled. "But we're not going to fight fair." What happened next would become legend. Not because of the weapons, not because of the tactics, but because of the fear. Voss opened every channel, every frequency, every bandwidth, every crack and crevice of Dominion communication. And then he started talking. He told stories. Stories about Vex learning to eat stew. Stories about Jax's first touch, Thrix's hidden warmth, Myra's lost laughter. Stories about late nights in the mess hall, arguments over repairs, the sound of a Xanthian clicking her mandibles in annoyance and a Kelpan giggling in response. He told the Dominion about family. And the Dominion couldn't process it. The hive mind was built on efficiency, on purpose, on the cold logic of consumption and control. It had no category for beings who would die for each other. It had no framework for loyalty that wasn't coerced. It had no defense against love. "Your emotions are inefficient," the Dominion commander snarled. "Maybe," Voss agreed. "But they're also terrifying, aren't they? Because you can't predict them. You can't control them. You can't turn them into biomass or recycle them into warriors. Emotions are messy and painful and illogical, and they're the only thing in the universe that has ever made a prey species stand up to a predator." The Dominion ships hesitated. For the first time in their existence, they hesitated. And that hesitation was all Voss needed. "Now," he said. Jax triggered the mining charges. Not aimed at the Dominion ships, aimed at the asteroid field behind them. The detonation sent a cascade of debris hurtling toward the fleet, forcing them to scatter. In the chaos, the silent depths slipped through their formation, heading straight for the fold space rupture that the Vorkath cruiser had left open. "We're through," Myra shouted. The Dominion ships regrouped, fired. Too late. The silent depths vanished into fold space, leaving the hunting fleet behind. On the bridge, Voss let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. His crew, his family, stood around him, battered and bleeding and alive. Vex leaned against the wall, his 4 eyes bright with tears that Xylos weren't supposed to be able to cry. "You made them afraid," Vex said. "I made them see the truth," Voss replied. "That loyalty isn't weakness. That family isn't inefficiency. That the only thing in the universe more powerful than a hive mind is a group of broken beings who choose to love each other." Thrix clicked her mandibles, but softly this time, almost gently. "You're a monster, Captain." "Maybe. A monster who weaponized friendship." Voss grinned. "The Dominion will be telling stories about us for generations. About the human who turned enemies into family. About the crew that couldn't be broken. About the silent depths that rose from the darkness and made the most powerful empire in the galaxy run." Myra's tentacles curled into a smile, her first real smile in months. "I like that story." "Then let's go write the next chapter." The fold space tunnel collapses behind them. The Dominion fleet retreats in confusion. And somewhere in the depths of space, a human captain looks at his alien family and realizes they've only just begun. 3 months later, the silent depths drifted through a nebula the color of blood and roses. It was a different ship now. Oh, the hull was the same, still patched, still scarred, still held together by Thrix's engineering miracles and stubborn refusal to die. But the spaces between the walls had changed. The corridors echoed with laughter. The mess hall smelled of cooking from 4 different species. The med bay still held the ghost of a young Xylos who had almost died for family. Vex stood at the viewport, watching the nebula swirl. His carapace had healed, the cracks sealed with biosteel grafts that Thrix had invented specifically for him. His 4 eyes were clear. His claws no longer trembled. But something else had changed, something deeper. "The Dominion has put a bounty on you," Vex said without turning. "On all of us. The human who made them afraid. The Xanthian who refused to be logical. The Kelpan who learned to laugh again. The Vorkath who called his people to war. And the Xylos who chose freedom," Voss said, joining him at the viewport. "Don't forget that part." Vex's mandibles clicked in what Voss had learned was amusement. "I am worth less than you. They value fear more than freedom." "Then they're idiots." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the nebula twist and bloom. Behind them, the ship hummed with life, Myra and Thrix arguing over navigation, Jax cooking something that smelled alarming, the 2 rescued Xylos learning to speak their first words of English. Family. It had started as a word, a concept, a desperate gamble by a lonely human captain who didn't know how else to survive. Now it was a weapon, a shield, a home. "What happens now?" Vex asked. Voss thought about it. About the Dominion hunting fleet that would never stop hunting. About the Vorkath cruiser that had disappeared back into fold space, leaving Jax to choose his own path. About the alliance of species that had heard rumors of the silent depths and started sending messages, requests for help, offers of sanctuary, warnings of danger. "We keep going," Voss said. "We salvage, we explore, we find other broken beings and teach them what family means. And when the Dominion comes..." Voss smiled, the same smile from the bridge 3 months ago, the smile that had made an empire afraid. "Then we remind them why they ran." The message arrived 3 days later. Not from the Dominion, from something else. A human distress signal, broadcasting from the edge of known space. A colony under attack. A species Voss had never heard of, begging for help. The crew gathered on the bridge. Thrix analyzed the signal. "It's real. The encryption matches Alliance protocols." Myra plotted the course. 37 hours at maximum fold. We'll burn through our fuel reserves. Jax checked the weapons. the new ones they'd salvaged from the Dominion wreckage, jury-rigged and untested. We are still outgunned. Vex looked at Voss. We are still family. Voss looked at each of them. At the beings who had started as strangers, become coworkers, turned into something that had no name in any language. 37 hours, he said. Thrix, find us more fuel. Myra, get some sleep, you're flying. Jax, prep the weapons. Vex. He paused. Vex, get ready to welcome some new family members. The silent depths turned toward the distress signal. Behind it, the nebula swirled like blood and roses. Ahead of it, danger waited, and hope, and loss, and all the messy, terrifying, beautiful things that came from caring about someone other than yourself. The Dominion had learned to fear one human and his crew. But there were more humans out there, more crews, more families. And somewhere in the depths of space, the echo of the silent depths was spreading, a reminder that the universe's most dangerous weapon wasn't a virus or a bomb or a supernova. It was a single word, spoken by a single voice in the darkness between stars. Stay. The end.